aware universities out there. Need blind means that we do not look at a student's financial need in the admissions process. It's not going to factor into the decision whatsoever. So please, as you're reviewing these students, make sure that you are not factoring in their ability to potentially pay to come to this institution into the decision. Need aware means that it is something that would be factored into the admissions process. So I always like to ask you guys, why might a need aware university utilize this in their admissions process? Yeah.
They might only have a certain amount of money to give out.
Exactly. So they might only have a certain amount of money to give out. Oftentimes, universities that meet full demonstrated need of a student will read applicants need aware because they're going to meet the need of the admitted student, the demonstrated need through the FAFSA and or the CSS profile, depending on what the school requires for financial aid forms. And so in order to determine how they want to spend their money and utilize their money, they might factor that into the admissions process. It's kind of like an investment for those students. You know, we're going to invest in these students, so we're going to factor that into the holistic part of the review. And a holistic admissions process means that we're reviewing every aspect of the student. So as you guys are reading this applicant, factor in their GPA, their test scores, you know, what classes did they take? How did they challenge themselves in high school? What are they thinking about majoring in? And how might you see that demonstrated throughout their kind of high school career? We're going to talk about activities. You know, what have they done? What are they involved in? Where have they showed leadership? Remember, we need to prioritize students with leadership because that's an institutional goal that we have currently. What kind of things have they done to demonstrate their personality in their essay? When you read the essay, remember, we're looking to get to know the students a little bit more. So how do you identify the students in the essay? Letters of recommendation are important. Oftentimes I use the letters of recommendation to justify why I am presenting an admissions decision to the committee and why I'm saying, you know, I really feel strongly about the student. So when you read these decisions, kind of think about that. So now you guys are going to start kind of reviewing the students as a group, and every student is a little different. So I'm going to assign each group a student, and then if you would divide and conquer some of the work, you're going to have about 5 minutes to review the application individually, and then 5 minutes to discuss it as a group. And then we're going to come together, and you're going to have about 5 minutes to present that student to the group, and then we will discuss the group. We'll discuss all of the students as a whole. So you guys will be reading for Peter Schwartz. You guys will be reading for Jackson Earl West. And then you will be reading for Lucia. There are some extra applications over here so you guys can review. I think it's best to divide and conquer the work. Again, you guys have 5 minutes to do some individual review before we break it up into review. I will be standing around. If you have any questions, please pull me aside. I'll be walking around and trying to talk with you. I am setting timers to keep us on schedule.
Yeah, I did.
I think he's the last one. He's the last one. He is? Yeah, I think he's, oh yeah.
I'm not sure. Sounds like she may want to.
Yeah,
Take
it's going like
the grades once they.
Oh,
I think is what.
okay.
I just wanted to say.
All
So,
right.
I'm happy to go back and see if I can get the essays.
Yeah, Jackson.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, what was the other, so essays and what?
Test scores, grades, classes. Since I found myself on the education, maybe I can look at classes and see what classes is present.
Yeah,
I
do
won't get lost
activities.
that way.
You do, okay, I can look at writing. Sure.
Oh,
So this is a special.
his graduating class is.
That's literally.
Oh, 571, right after. Oh, it's the page where they say it's very. Okay, yeah, so tell me what's the. Pretty diverse. Only 26% white. Okay, yeah, I remember that one was really diverse. Yeah, I was surprised, especially for like a suburban
You'll kind of catch on to the
Yeah, going to DR. Interesting.
probably not
Right? Yeah.
I love how you
Oh, you have to, yeah, you have to put that through. And then my husband and my son just, after all the sheets.
Yeah, so he actually went and asked for help.
Yeah, it's a lot.
The content than just the grade. What else was here? Where are his extracurriculars? He's in speech and debate, right? Yeah, his counselor said he was very excellent in terms of, he really likes.
I haven't seen that.
Oh, no.
There's a lot of honors.
What the activities or something?
Yeah.
Dance and that.
Yeah, either special, artistic or funny.
Some of that.
how many questions or how are you doing for you?
What's our goal kind of here? We broke up.
So the goal is for you guys to get to know the students, and then you're gonna present to the students, the committee, and the committee will decide what we do with the students. You guys are the advocates for the students, or you're the person who says, you know, I think the writing is great, but I just want to show the students. And then we can so you guys are the person bringing the student to our committee. And that's kind of how committee admissions work, so I would read for a student in my territory, and then bring that student to committee and make a recommendation based on the student, but ultimately the group would make a decision about what we do with the students.
So we're gonna go discuss.
Actually. And then you guys will discuss as a group about what you should do with the student when we can bring it to the entire group. So basically, normally it's one person bringing a student to a committee, but since we're all new to this, we're kind of doing teamwork.
So does one person read this application, only one person usually, and then it could get tossed?
Some come in, most of the time there's some kind of oversight in the process, of course, right? So you know, making sure that you're doing something. Every institution does things a little bit differently. Some schools don't do committee style reading, where you have 3 readers read the application and the 2 decisions. That's kind of the decision that they go with. And then other times the initial process is a little bit more regimental. There are institutions out there that do specific grid style revisions, GPA test scores. You need certain things and you're good. It just depends on the institution. But this is how
Did you see?
this is how often highly the admissions process works. Because again, you know, you're really a lot of these students have a lot of similarities and a lot of differences, but academically they're all kind of in a similar category. So we're looking at that at every aspect of it and as a group working.
Therefore, let's become it's not only where I want to be, it's where I need to be.
So you guys have had about 5 minutes to individually look at the group, the students. If you come together as a group and start discussing the strengths and weaknesses, you know, some of you may have noticed something that someone else didn't. So be sure to have these conversations because they'll be important when we get to the group discussion. You have about 5 minutes to do this.
You guys want me to kick it off from an education standpoint? So, I guess this topic is up to speed on curriculum and education. In 9.3 we have 12. Seniors good, not great, doesn't give the class ranking.
All right.
There aren't any AP classes, most of the classes are literature, history, it doesn't listen to wants to go to arts direction.
So that shows some devotion.
I only see them being in honors for 1
Second,
year.
that's what I was thinking.
As far as SAT, VCT, all that
Mostly
stuff.
third weeks. I know, it's a
They
small
were,
school.
she said, that's
Three
the same,
point eight,
kind of
3.9.
below, slightly below their average, so definitely not normal, but not really off the charts.
Well, and,
And obviously I saw she's going
you
to
take many
going to
APs,
school.
honors, but only one AP, right?
Not really. Geographic diversity, everything, still Southeast. So there was nothing here from an education standpoint that really jumped out at me.
Right, because you're gonna take some APs.
Distinguishing factor from this person. And again, from the geography, from like a take, again, not quite outside where they're looking to draw from. So for that section of it, I'm kind of.
And that's what he wants.
Strongest discipline.
So that's pretty
It's
good.
kind of hard because she wrote a special letter, or a special essay, so not the new one. But really how that might fit in that, she's interested in dance, looking for dance, she was leadership, summer volunteer.
Doing Farmers in America.
Oh, yeah. They probably did love that. Fabulous. She actually took it upon herself to get admitted to a different high school to be challenged.
I guess.
So I think those are all pluses. So, but I agree with
In
you,
addition.
numbers wise,
Right.
you know, it's below what they're looking
Without
for.
having the background information in their personal story.
Yeah, but she's got, some
Do they have an essay?
Yeah, elaborating on that too. She's taking multiple classes that benefit the community and school.
Well,
She's caring for her own family, so there's diversity in her schools there. And then she's a big dancer. They said there's some dancers in the school too. She has a job, volunteers for academic programs outside of school.
so, right. Right, so it's like right in the middle. So that would be a.
It came down to talk about.
Right. So that's something.
This school is like arts.
All the same.
Well, that's true. You're right, because they have a new dance studio and it's an art, it's more artsy, it sounds like.
So I don't know why. He's a drummer. Smart he was.
Yes.
Yes, Westby College was.
Well, and people with Center for Global Leadership,
Yeah.
Yes,
is somebody that
did.
did,
She's got some doctors.
doctor.
Let's take it, again, it's hard. I don't know.
They just opened a new center.
But I mean.
Right down Jackson.
Well, you said his essay
A lot of
too.
struggles and a lot of other things.
Diversity, that's true, that's true.
That is the
Which one? Diversity?
the diversity and
Yeah, one person.
the new president, the new principal.
Some of the kids like this are definitely
Chancellor, I don't know what's her.
Yeah,
don't
I
see it
think
as a
that's
privilege.
probably a plus, isn't it?
No, they view it as something that they say, and I take it more seriously than somebody that's had everything handed.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Oh, that's right, not science is.
You read about, she did her brief overview on Westview.
But you're totally right, it is very science.
President and several. Did you get a sense of
Oh,
what
she's
she
a
was?
new,
Dr.
People that
Dr.
do
Torres.
review.
Oh,
She is the board of three.
Willing to overcome obstacles, and that's
Special
what
Roberts and all those things.
University.
I wanted
Does anybody have an
to
opinion on that?
recognize.
I didn't.
I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't.
Just looking.
Although soccer,
Although that you're not allowed math in our classes, it is more liberal arts.
Yeah.
That standpoint, I mean,
I know, kind of.
She doesn't have a lot of that.
Didn't watch it or something.
I like that there's a whole funnel.
Do you think her dance
Yes.
was
Some of these.
strong enough, unique enough that it fits that one criteria? Because I think you mentioned
Yeah.
the dance and some leadership or someone did.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she just took a dance class, and a cultural dance group member, so she's part of the group.
So,
Cultural dances and classes at school, and that's okay. So she just had one dance class, it doesn't bring in one group on it, but she does a job, family responsibilities, community service volunteer, and school spirit. So I'd say stronger than most.
So when we go back to the criteria of what the president does.
It made something of
you have
itself.
diversity is not-
Yeah.
The dance, academic or outstanding athleticism or art, not necessarily exists.
And
And I think the other criteria was leadership, right?
Yeah.
So, somebody mentioned leadership. Do we think that this person's strong enough in leadership that they don't need those or perhaps is this, as you said, maybe an opportunity to waitlist somebody? Just my opinion, starting to move towards that.
I mean, as far as we can tell from the information we have on leadership, there's nothing outstanding. Yeah, they did it, maybe they showed more because she doesn't have a lot of help from her family and stuff.
So leadership. Just that one AP.
Although she's.
Okay, everybody, we're gonna come together as another group because this is the time
Oh,
where,
what? Split classes.
hi guys, if we could come together as a total group. Sorry, I hate kind of breaking up the great discussions. But this is the point where we're gonna come together and we're gonna discuss the merits of the student and we're gonna dig deep into some of these pieces. And remember, I'm the Dean of Admissions tonight, so for Westview College. So one of the things that I'm gonna be reminding you about is our institutional goals, because I'm constantly having meetings with our president about how we're meeting those institutional goals. And so I might ask you guys some questions and play devil's advocate with these candidates. Just keep in mind that as the Dean of Admissions, I'm constantly thinking about some of these goals and in the back of my head and how they will work. Just so you guys know, I'm actually not a Dean of Admissions. I'm a Regional Director of Admissions, but it's kind of fun in this setting to pretend to be admissions.
Who does the Dean of Admissions answer to?
Usually the president, the
So
board.
Dr. Dorr.
In this case, yes. There might be a vice president of enrollment management or something like that. It just depends on the structure of the institution. But usually the Dean of Admissions is answering to those who are creating the institutional goals at hand for the institution. Every school is a little different, so every school is like leadership structure varies, but usually the dean will answer kind of to that person. But one of the things that I'm going to do real quick is you guys have about 5 minutes as a group to each present your students to all of us. So let's go ahead and start with Peter, who is over here on this side. What are some of the strengths that you guys found with Peter as a candidate? Peter challenged himself. Hi guys. One of the things that I ask is when we do our group discussions, you listen to the other group because you're going to make a decision on who we vote and bring into this school. So it might not. Peter might be the student that you guys end up champion. So that's why it's important to kind of listen it to each student. So Peter, real quick. Peter
challenged himself all 4 years.
Rigorous curriculum.
Rigorous schedule. He took 10 AP and honors courses in 4 years.
Peter's letters of recommendation tell us that even though his grades are not the best in his school, he challenged himself and he was an extremely hard worker. And basically that his grades did not necessarily reflect his academic potential. So
I like something that you brought up. He's not the strongest student in his school, but he's done well academically. He's taken 10 AP courses. He's obviously done well academically. What does that tell you about his high school?
It's very rigorous.
Very rigorous high school. Very competitive high school. Yes.
Question. You're saying he's taken 10 AP classes, but yet he's doing okay, or is he doing very well?
He's in the top 30% of his class.
Yes.
How big is his class?
571
And
students.
where is he ranked?
Top 30.
Yeah, it just says 30%.
Top 30.
So he goes to what kind of school does he go to?
A suburban, is it an independent school? I think it's a public school.
Well, I mean, his parents are, his mom's a PhD, his dad's a lawyer.
And where
They live
is
in
it?
Florida.
Florida.
Another piece of note, I mean, he struggled in math and he admits that he struggled in math and he wasn't going to be in AP calculus, but he went and met with a teacher and asked how and what he needed to do to make it into the class. So he didn't automatically qualify to go into AP calculus, but his teacher recommended him for that.
Yeah, and who did he get his letter of recommendation from?
His math
His math teacher.
Yes. And both letters of rec stated that he was in it for learning, not for what it looked like on transcript. He was really more interested in actually learning concepts.
Peter also has really good extracurriculars. He was part of the debate team. He did quite a few volunteer activities.
Would you call him a leader?
Yeah, I would. His personal essay is about him volunteering at a summer camp for inner city kids in Miami. And he talks about how it impacted him and it made him want to continue to make impacts on kids like that in the future. And then also his guidance counselor said he was a great presence within his school and that he was basically a leader to younger kids.
What did you guys learn about him from his essay? What did his essay tell you about him as a student? And a person, and a, sorry, I
didn't feel like his essay really told us very much about him. It told us about his experience. And so that was a little bit disappointing to me.
Another question too, did his essay really answer the prompt that he was writing for?
Not until the very last paragraph, and it just didn't seem like he gave it enough of that. That's what the whole essay should have been about.
And then, so what is Peter's proposed, what is his goal? What does he want to study eventually? What is his kind of passion in life? Writing.
Literature, yeah.
Did you think that essay gave you guys a good sample of his strengths or weaknesses as a writer and a potential future? Okay.
No.
Really wow us, yeah.
Not about essay, but what about his supplement questions? So you all should have read the supplement questions about why the student is applying to Westview. What did you guys think of his supplement questions versus his essay?
Definitely took like a unique approach. Like he said, why not Westview? He definitely showed he really wanted to go to the school. It showed us that he has a lot of demonstrated interest. He went to the fair, he kept up communication with a representative from our school. So.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you there and we're going to put a pause on discussing this one student and we're going to talk about a really popular, not a popular trend in college admissions, but something that I think students and parents should be aware of. There is a term out there called demonstrated interest, and it's basically the student's interest in the institution and how it's demonstrated to the university. So in these supplement questions, that is what we're trying to grasp. How interested in our school is the student? You know, he came and visited. He met with the admissions rep here on campus. He clearly did his research. How can you tell that he did his research?
I think he said he did. And then
I might be missing
a
couple of them.
And then at the end it says, Westview College is not where I want to be, it's where I need to be.
Do you guys?
Not only where I want to be, but where I need to be.
Do you guys feel that he is a student who if we offer him admissions to the institution, he'll accept our offer of admission? Definitely. So that's what demonstrated interest is. It's the idea that we're trying to get an idea of how interested a student is in the institution. Now, don't start panicking and start planning trips to visit campus. I see students demonstrate interest in very many ways that don't require them to come and visit campus or meet with an admissions rep at your high school, because oftentimes admissions reps can't go to every high school or all the schools across the country. But sometimes I'll get emails from a student that says, hi, I just wanted to let you know that I'm very interested in your institution. I've done this research online. I plan to visit, and actually I record all the emails I get from students in their files. So when I'm reading their application, that's something that I can utilize in the admissions process. And the supplement questions oftentimes are gauged to understand how the student might be a good fit on campus and maybe what their interest is. So the why Westview college question and, what have you done to know that Westview is the right fit for you? That is what we're trying to gauge with that question. And you guys will kind of hear a little bit about the different ways that students have done it in this. And yes, you had a question, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. For For the UC applications, how are you supposed to demonstrate interest
Oh.
if you just check it off?
That is important. So not all schools use demonstrated interest. Not every institution out there will use demonstrated interest in the admissions process. And oftentimes it's going to be a smaller, maybe more liberal arts institution with a kind of a size like this that will use demonstrated interest. But the UCs will not use demonstrated interest in the admissions process because they're a public entity. So for them, again, they're not. Yeah, exactly. And some of the big schools with big kind of with low admissions rates, they're not going to use demonstrated interest in the admissions process because students really they don't need to. I used to, before I worked for TCU, I worked for another public university, and we never used demonstrated interest in the admissions process because as a public institution that was a little bit against what we stood for. But every institution is different. And as from what I've done in my research in the college admissions world, demonstrated interest is becoming more and more of a popular thing for institutions maybe like Westview College. So when you are filling out those supplement questions on the Common App, or if they have those supplement questions, why are you applying to this institution? That's what they're trying to gauge. And what often happens is students don't realize that those questions are important, and so they might rush through them. So the reason we bring these up in the case studies is to remind students that even though it's not your essay, and you spend so many hours working on your essay, the supplement questions can be a big discussed part in a committee style admission process. But yes, the UCs do not use
Would you still advise us to like email if we have one, especially in mind, like?
I mean, every institution is different. I would say with the UCs, I would talk with the University of Santa Barbara rep here, the UC Santa Barbara rep here. She'll be able to tell you a little bit more about that. I'm kind of uncomfortable about making a generalized statement for an institution and a system that I don't work for. So I would talk to her about that tonight, but I'm going to say they're probably not going to take that into consideration, but you should definitely double check with her.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, she's really nice. I know her very well, so she'll definitely answer your question.
I think Peter is a good fit for this institution because he's the leader.
Okay.
He was in student government for 3 years. Isn't he like president of his senior class and vice president previously or something like that? President of the debate club. I think that Peter thinks he wants to be a writer, but I think in reality, when you look at the courses he took and he excelled at, he probably is going to end up more in like international relations, especially after 5 years of Spanish.
And that's okay too. As a liberal arts and sciences college, he's gonna have to take a wide range of classes. So that's okay if he doesn't want to be a writer. But definitely some things to keep in mind. The committee believes he is a good fit. You may think he's a good fit, you may not think he's a good fit, but we're actually going to use that to wrap up and move on to Jackson.
Okay, so Jackson West is.
Was it the farmer boy?
Is a farmer boy from North Dakota who is looking for diversity, according to his essay and according to his.
North Dakota.
North Dakota.
How many applications from North Dakota do you think we get?
Not many.
We get more senators than congressmen. Sorry.
No, that's great. So North Dakota, it's an area that we would consider to be. It doesn't have a lot of geographical diversity to this area in the sense that if he were to be coming to our institution, he would be a very geographically diverse student. He would bring a perspective that we might not get from a student from the West Coast. So
which is one of their priorities or objectives.
Exactly. So as the dean of it.
Listed that as a positive.
Yes. Okay. So he's from North Dakota. So geographic diversity. Okay.
So he graduated second in his class of 38, but his ACT scores don't really reflect anything extraordinary. They're very middle of the range at 27.
Now, would you say that Jackson is the kind of student who may have access to great test prep or no? Okay.
There's only 2 AP classes offered.
Only 2 AP classes offered.
And he took one. Or he's taking one.
And he took
All out of honors.
And a lot of honors. Three honors classes.
So-
9th, 10th, and 11th.
That might demonstrate that he has the interest in.
I'm taking.
His letter was written by his physics teacher who said it was his strongest subject and he wants to major in physics according to his essay. He was a walk-on to the soccer team in 9th grade, injured his knee and came back from it.
What did you guys think of? What did you guys think of his essay?
His essay was underwhelming in that he did not
Really
talk
show
a whole
himself.
lot about himself.
He didn't really, he like addressed his challenge, but he didn't really say how, like what he learned and how that would affect his future.
Yeah, I wouldn't really say his writing skills were the greatest either.
And what was his topic?
Soccer.
Soccer. So it just
It's a failure, lesson from failure, which
Yeah.
Also, I feel like that's very
Soccer's
generic, like to choose a sports thing. It's super generic instead of doing something kind of outside.
One of the other issues that we kind of identified as a group was the demonstrated interest. Essentially, he found out by a neighbor who had gone to the same school. I think that's kind of like saying, "Oh, my girlfriend thought I should apply, so I did." You know,
Yeah.
I don't know that I would have put it that way. He could have said that he has a
can
lot
highly
of,
recommend
it
it.
came highly recommended from the neighborhood.
Exactly.
So it was really more a way that he expressed it in the essay rather than
Too direct.
what the actual situation probably is.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that do you think that he? Yeah, I think you guys covered it properly. Yeah.
So, however, I think demonstrated interest as a result of it. I just think that my interpretation is because he's a farm boy, he's probably very direct and he says things like it is, which can be a good thing.
Yeah.
So, maybe that out of that lack of regional diversity, so to speak, maybe hinders him. However, he does show his demonstrated interest because in both sections, he talks about he did his research, online research. So he did actually put in the effort.
And he's just maybe more direct and we may not. I like how you put that because as admissions counselors, one of the things that we have to do is try to understand the territory that we're working with. So as a committee, you just brought up something that's really important for the other committee members to notice. He is coming from a different territory than a lot of our other students are coming from. So yes, he might be more direct. So to him, that is expressing interest in a very heavy manner. And we may not see it as that because of the way that we're looking at it. But you guys know this territory because you're reading for this territory. So you understand the students who would be coming from a rural part of the country. Speaking of farm boy and other things like that, what are some of his involvements and activities? Would you guys describe them?
FFA.
FFA.
That's kind of the issue. He
It's
doesn't
big.
really ring that bell at all. It turns out he's president, vice president.
He's very involved.
And it's Republican leadership.
And then all his community service was involved with
I almost
kind
missed
of
that, to be honest with you. I was like, how did he
festivals.
demonstrate leadership? He didn't say a thing about that in his essay.
But
But he had to ring
and
that bell.
activities, livestock judgeship, so he's very
He was a
involved.
judge for life.
Judge, yeah.
Right.
It does show like he did do it for 4 years though, and he played the instrument for 4 years, and he did the same community service for 4 years.
he's
And then
it does
his
kind of
work,
show dedication. Yeah.
and worked 11th, 12th year, right?
Yeah, I mean,
As the cashier at that feed company.
oh yeah, so
So it
he's
all
had a
kinda ties
part-time
into
job. So he's very involved.
Yeah. And it's probably, if you want to interpret, it's probably because a lot of those things were not available at the school. So he went outside, right?
Yeah.
To FFA, the livestock and stuff like that. And then the other,
Instructions, yeah.
So
The other thing
one
is
more
that-
thing about Jackson before we move on. Oh, go for
I
it.
was just going to say one thing. If you look at the objectives, he actually hits all of the objectives that Dr. Dole. So I'll definitely put that in mind.
Okay, so he does. He really does need he's from a part of the country that we don't see a lot of applicants from. He would really bring in that geographic diversity. He is definitely involved. His essay is probably not the strongest, and I think we can admit, and he did not demonstrate some of the leadership that he had, but you, as his committee readers, have brought some insight into him as an applicant that maybe some of our other committees might not have realized because they don't know the territory as well. So thank you guys so much for bringing some of that in there. We're going to move on to our last candidate, Lucia, and guys, what do you want to say about our female candidate tonight?
So Lucia Torres, you could say, is a little different from the other two applicants.
Okay.
Growing up with only one parent, she's from Atlanta. What else do you guys want to elaborate on?
The positives of the well, okay. Her
Her
scores
ranks
are
and-
fabulous. They're not way up there. They're kind of below the middle of the road. Yet,
she has some of the things. She's interested in dance, is taking a dance class. Her volunteer, she's got some leadership things where she volunteered. And she has one letter of recommendation that pretty strongly said, it would be amiss to let Lucia slip away and not admit her. So from a community aspect, she meets those goals too. Multicultural.
Did they elaborate on why it would be a mistake to let her slip?
Yeah, the whole,
Does she work really hard outside of the home?
Yeah,
Is she
takes care of her
taking down a
niece or
full-time
something,
job? That kind
and she's volunteering, and so leadership and volunteering, I guess, is one of the things. The most important activity I'm involved with at school is the Multicultural Student Coalition. So it's helped her to grow as a person, and she took her role as mentor seriously. It was her job to guide students and empower them to speak up and ask questions.
So she demonstrated interest for sure with the dance and the global, whatever that was. Her essay.
What did you guys think of her essay?
Well, it was different than the others too, because it wasn't answering a specific question. It was the kind where, what did it say? If you have a background or a story that's so central to your identity that you believe your application would not be, or would be incomplete without it. So for her, it wasn't answering. We didn't have an essay where she answered a specific question. We just had the essay where she talked about her role.
What did you learn about her from her essay?
She's definitely struggled her whole life, and trying to get to college is a big goal for her.
Yeah, she struggled. And what are some of the things that you noticed about her academic history that might be different and might show some strengths, maybe maybe some of her struggle in there? What did her transcripts really say about her academic history?
I think from that standpoint, she showed a desire for culture, community, history, right? But she didn't necessarily push herself from an AP honors standpoint. But if you look at it from the point of view of her lifestyle and what she was dealing with, I think she took what she loved and she cared about, right? That was what was important to her.
Well, what are some of the courses that she
got
took?
better too, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's
she requested to change schools to be more academically challenged.
And one of the things that we look at too is how many APs and honors are offered at a school, because not every institution offers the same amount of APs and honors. And I think we have a really good example because we have a student who went to a large public school with 500 students, and he had the ability to take 10 APs and honors. But how many APs and honors did she have the ability to take?
I don't know the ability. I didn't see that in there. I know she had one honors class and all that stuff.
They don't offer AP courses. But what are some of the courses that her high school does offer? What were some of the courses that she's taken in her senior year?
Senior year, astronomy, advanced painting, Asian history, and South American history are some that stand out.
French 4, so another kind of multicultural thing.
And definitely a challenging class. Anytime a student takes past the required language courses, which is usually 2 years, that's showing academic challenge. Anytime a student is taking courses that they don't have to take in their senior year, that is academic challenge, because we're seeing them do something that they didn't have to do, and they could have taken the easier route, but they opted to do something a little bit more rigorous. And sometimes that gets forgotten when you're considering rigor, because you just think AP and honors, but every school's rigor looks a little bit differently.
Another first school that has 100% four-year college rate.
100% four-year college rate.
College prep.
Also, the top GPA wasn't even, I think it goes to 12. The top GPA wasn't even 12. It was like 11.6.
Now,
so it's really different.
Now, one of the things, she changed schools, and you guys mentioned that she did show an upward trend. She definitely has some struggle as far as the academics go. She grew up kind of with that single mom. She definitely has okay test scores. She did dance and volunteer, but she's from Atlanta. Does that meet the geographic kind of consideration? Okay. So Atlanta, Georgia. So we've learned quite a lot about these 3 students. And what we're going to do as a group is you guys are going to get to vote for one student who we're going to admit to our institution. When we're in committee styles, it's not as archaic as this, but just for time's purposes, we're going to have to kind of go ahead and come to a decision. But before we do, I want to open it up to the floor for any last minute thoughts on your students. And before I do that, I just want to say you guys have been an amazing group to work with. Thank you guys so much for coming to my case study tonight. You have really brought and discussed a lot of the important things that get discussed in a committee, but we can only admit one of these students. So what are some last minute thoughts that you want to bring to the table? Because I think we have 3 excellent candidates. And yeah, what are some of your guys' thoughts?
How much of a factor do we want to put on the student's ability to succeed with the curriculum and complete it? That's a judgment call. Nobody can predict the future. But are we looking for red flags?
I would say with the 3 students that we have we're looking at, I would say they all have demonstrated their ability to do well in curriculum. They've all done decently well academically. They all have decent test scores. Lucia, if you look at her transcripts, you notice that there's definitely some struggle, especially in that sophomore year when she changed schools. But if you look at her upward trend, it's definitely gotten stronger. So there is clear evidence that she can be successful. And I think that every student has demonstrated one way or another that they could be successful at our institution. Now it's just trying to decide who's the best fit for our institution out of these 3 students.
Lucia also wants to be a PhD. She's not a quitter.
Okay, so she wants to go for her PhD.
Would she be first? No, never mind.
Well,
she has a brother
She has a
that went
brother.
to a 2-year.
Okay. Now, are there any other students who would be considered, because I think we could consider her first gen. Is there anybody else in this group who might be considered first gen?
Maybe
Jackson.
Look at Jackson's family and his background. He is also first gen. Yeah, so Lucia had a brother who did attend a 2-year school, but I think she's really going for that 4-year school, and nobody else in her family has done that. Jackson has not had anybody look for that kind of community in there. Anything else? Any other things that you want? Yes.
I just have a question.
Yes.
Between Jackson and Peter, for example, would it be better to take a lot of AP classes and get decent grades, or take regular classes and get better grades?
So that depends, because it's a balance, right? It really is a balance. So it really does just kind of depend on the student and the situation. So Jackson only had access to 2 AP classes, and he took one of those. Peter had access to 10 AP, well, more than 10 AP classes. But he did take a big chunk of the AP courses that were offered at his school. I think it just depends on what the schools give you, and it's really hard to compare apples to oranges. This is what I tell students: try to do what you think would fit best for you as far as the AP courses or the challenging courses, because you can only do what you're comfortable with. And I would never encourage a student to take more AP courses knowing that they can't be successful in them. I think it would be better to just take a couple if you know that it's going to be challenging, and then do your very best in those and show that strength, versus taking 10 of them and just overwhelming yourself to the point where you're not successful, you're not happy, and you're stressing yourself out. So from my standpoint, that's kind of the advice I would say. But it's hard to compare these 2 students because they're apples to oranges. Their schools are completely different, and we have to understand that their institutions are completely
Somewhat down the
10
same
minute
path.
warning.
Okay, thank you.
Somewhat down the same path. Do you care how often a student takes the SAT or the ACT?
So some schools do. Some schools look at that and they'll average the test scores between if you submit them. Some schools are very focused on that. Other schools don't care. So it's institutional, kind of how they'll depend on that. Oftentimes schools that super score the SATs, so super scoring means that they would take the highest one section, the highest the other. They're not going to care how many times you you take them. But I would say as far as a student goes, 2 times is the most we really recommend a student to take the SAT or ACT. 3 times is pushing it. Anything after that, there's a lot of evidence that shows that the scores really just kind of level themselves out. And so one of the things that I might be concerned about as a reader, if I'm seeing a ton of test scores, you know, what was this student trying to accomplish? And I just I would maybe say something, but it's very common to see students take it twice.
So are we looking at this right when we look at Lucia having taken it 3 times on here?
Yeah.
So that is when we read that.
Yeah, and that's fine because that's usually what is at the most recommended. But I would say in this case, we're not going to care how many times she's taken it. It's just if I saw a student take it 4 or 5 times, I might be a little concerned. But 2 or 3 is pretty standard.
So it seems like they're all academically qualified to go. I feel like it's more of a fit, like who fits best with their goals and for the university. Like, I think any of them could be admitted and like meets the standards. So I guess it's just a goal of like who is the biggest leader, who like brings diversity to the school.
Who's the best fit? Who is the best fit for our goals? That's the whole college process is fit. Who is the fit on the college side? Who is the fit for you as the student? Fit is a word we throw around in the college process so much, but it is very meaningful, and it is something that is meaningful to us. So of these, you nailed it right on the dot. Of these candidates, they're all academically qualified. So who do we think? Do we think as a committee fits our institution and the goals that we have best?
Goals, it's the diversity, it's leadership, and then it's special academic, autistic athletic talent. That's what's listed as the 3 goals for the admissions for this year.
Who do you think fits that best?
Right.
Jackson has all 3. He has the athletic excellence, he has the leadership, and he definitely has the geographic diversity.
At the same time, though, you know,
I think Lucia's actually going to do best in this school.
She's not gonna give up.
I think Lucia is going to be the one that thrives. I think, you're looking for my opinion, I think Jackson's solid. He does what he needs to do, and he hits everything that he needs to get. I think Peter is good for a number of reasons, but probably would be more attracted to a different school. But I think Lucia is a fit for this school. That's what I think.
Peter's also the one who really, really wants to go here.
Well, how many really wants to go places do you think he has? I bet he said that to Yale. I bet he said that to Harvard. I bet he said that to Princeton. Okay, and so I hate to put it that way, but I don't know that he demonstrated anything huge over the top that says this is his school.
Well, what on the stats that these guys picked up, was there anything that demonstrated his perseverance? I didn't get it. Was there anything?
It was his letters breath saying this kid.
Her senior year.
Was learning not that great.
They weren't
He talks about he
She
had a
was
lot of struggle on
multicultural
his math courses.
But he persevered, right?
He persevered.
this is like, you guys, your discussion is awesome. I'm glad this is being recorded right now.
Well, what does she want to study? I know she wants to end up being.
Well, so actually what we're gonna do today is we're gonna take a vote.
She's not sure
So
what she wants to end up
to be for him. She's the
But what kind of
multicultural president of her school right now.
So we're going to take a vote, and we have 3 options, and we have about 3 minutes, so this is perfect. You get to vote to admit 1 student, because we do have to come to a consistent, and we'll come to a consistency as a group. One of the things that you should know is in committee-style admissions, sometimes heated discussions happen, and admission counselors do read these students' applications, and we get attached to them, and sometimes the decision doesn't come out the way that we want it. So just keep in mind that if you're not happy with the decision, that can happen in this style admissions process.
You can wait list.
Well, and remember, so we have an admission process, we have a waitlist process, and we we have a deny process. So let's talk about the wait list. The wait list could be a good option for a student who we feel might be a good fit at our institution, but we're unsure. So we might see how students accept our admissions decision, but one of the things we might also see is we also might see how that student might accept our wait list decision. So now not all institutions do this, so I have to put a caveat on that this is not a blanketed statement, but we're going to do this for Westview College because if we feel that there is a student who we're very interested in, but we want to see if they want to come to us, they could maybe accept our offer of waitlist. And if we don't get the number of students accept our offer of admissions, we might be able to open up a spot for that student and offer them a spot off of our waitlist. That is what the waitlist is for. It really is to see if we have the space to bring that student into our institution. So we could do this for one of our students. So we're going to do 3 votes. We're going to vote for admit, we're going to vote for waitlist, and we're going to vote for deny. So we're going to start with the admit vote. Who in this room would like to admit Jackson? Raise your hand high. 1, 2, 3.
You vote more than once?
4. No. 5. Okay, so start. You only have 1 vote. You'd like to admit Jackson. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. Okay. I might have to get a new pen. You would like to admit Lucia. Raise your hand high. 1, 2, 3. 14. You would like to admit Peter. Raise your hand high. Team Peter, you guys gotta vote for him. Okay? No, I think every student needs a champion in the admissions process. And there are champions for students who don't get admitted in the admissions process. And that's important to know that there are champions for students. Waitlist. Who would like to waitlist Jackson? Raise your hand high. 1. Okay, wait, I'm gonna have to do it again. Raise your hand high. Has everybody voted? Okay, final chance to vote.
Waitlisting.
Waitlisting.
Okay.
Yes, because you only got to vote to admit one student. Okay, ready? Raise your hand high. Have we made our decision? I need to do a count. Okay, we're waitlisting. 12. Who would like to waitlist Lucia? We still have to take a vote on every student. And then Peter. Okay. Deny Jackson. Okay. Oh, okay.
Wait, deny?
Deny Jackson.
We have to vote for one of them, right?
I guess you do, yeah. So, yep.
Yep.
So it's going to look a lot like our waitlist votes, I think. Lucia. Who would like to deny Lucia? Okay. And then Peter. Okay, I'm not going to count. So we have decided that we are going to offer Lucia our offer of admissions. She's going to get a nice letter, a nice packet that says, welcome to our institution. We'll do some financial aid stuff. Maybe she'll receive some scholarships. And then she can decide whether she wants to attend our institution or not. The deadline to do so is May 1st. Jackson is going to get a nice letter that says, hey, you've been placed on our wait list. In order to accept this position, please sign on to your student account and accept this position to be on the wait list. If he goes through and accepts the position to be on his wait list, maybe he emails the counselor he's been working with and says, hey, I really want to attend this institution. I know you put me on the wait list, but we've really done some soul searching and I realize this is the right place for me. Maybe he might get an offer of admissions later down the line. Maybe closer to May 1st, we realize that we are going to have some spots available, and he is somebody that we feel would be a great candidate for admission. So we're going to see how this goes. Peter, we just felt that Peter was not the best fit for our school. He demonstrated the interest. He showed that demonstrated interest, but he doesn't really meet some of the priorities that we're looking for our institution for him to be a strong fit for us. We're going to send him a letter of denial, but what I want all students to understand about denial letters is that it's not saying that you're a bad student. It's not saying that you're a bad person. It's saying that there are other things going on in the admissions process that you might not have realized. I hear often students, really get worked up about these denial letters. And I remember being in your shoes. It's really hard to know that you're putting yourself to be judged and considered. But what I hope you walked away with today is a little bit more of an understanding of how this process works. It really is a complicated process. It's a holistic admissions process. So we look at everything. And definitely take the time to put yourself out there for schools, but if you hear a letter back from them, you know, there are other fits out there for you, and you guys are going to find your place. You're going to find your fit, the place that you belong, and you're going to look back on this process 10 years later, and you're going to think, you know what, I'm glad I ended up where I did. So hopefully you guys have a better understanding of this process. You guys were an excellent group. I'm really glad their discussions got recorded because you guys were phenomenal. Thank you so much for working with me today.
Thank you.
Oh, and I'm a little late. Oh, I always do that.
SAT and ACT, because students tend to do better on one than the other. At Colorado Mesa, we super score, so we actually encourage students who have taken the test multiple times to send in all of their score reports. And for those of you who may not be familiar with SuperScore, I'm going to use it in an example. So for example, if I was applying to Colorado Mesa University and I took the SAT and I did really well on the reading score and my math score is so-so. So I took the SAT over again. And on the next test, my math score was raised, but my reading score wasn't as strong as my first test. So I'm going to send in both of those score reports into CMU. And what CMU will do is take my highest reading score for my first test and my highest math score for my second test and combine that to create my overall highest score. And that overall highest score is used not only for admission, but also my benefit for merit scholarships. And CMU is very unique. We not only use that process for the SAT, but we also use that process for the ACT. And there's not very many schools that do that for the ACT, so that's definitely something to look into when you're doing your college research. But definitely take both tests at least once. I think it's very important.
So a lot of exactly what you said, except for we do not super score the ACT. So if you took it 3 times, God bless you, then we'll just super score and take what's best there for you, and you'll be considered for the merit-based scholarships with that super score. So the ACT, it's just the composite that we're looking at.
I think the most important thing is that you understand the different policies for every college that you're applying to and whether they're going to super score or not and what they are going to super score. Like we super score both the ACT and SAT. Some schools only do the SAT. Some schools don't super score at all. So it's important to ask that question of any schools that you're looking at.
Anything else? Otherwise, guys, on behalf of Karen and Katie and myself, I do want to say thank you guys for coming out. And I want to give a big round of applause to the people that did all the work, actually, is these guys up here on stage. We do, just on the final note, we do want to try to do this most likely next year, is my guess. So hopefully we'll see if we can bring a few of these wonderful people back, and maybe a few other ones, and offer this again, maybe make this a yearly or potentially bi-yearly or a couple every year opportunity. We think it's a very unique thing. We do have an upcoming engagement in Truckee that we need to be getting on the road to, so unfortunately the reps will be having to leave, so if you guys wouldn't mind giving them their privacy so they can get on the road and get things going, that'd be awesome. I know there people might have a ton of questions, but most likely you can find their information on their website or another admissions officer. So thank you guys for coming. We hope you enjoyed your time. People to come next year. We had about 114 folks tonight. We had about 70 last year, so we're increasing every year. Thank you, guys.
How you doing, man? All right.